the woman that needs no introduction, the woman who compares herself to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, that there is no place like home. Help me welcome Mary-elect Karen Freeman Wilson. Thank you. To Mayor Rudy Clay, a man who has so ably delivered a shiny baton. To our special guest, the Reverend Dr. Floyd Flake. To all of the members of this distinguished dais, to my husband, Carmen Wilson, and our entire family, and to the indomitable citizens and friends of one of the greatest cities, not just in Indiana, but in the United States of America, Gary, Indiana. Good morning. Good morning. I would first like to thank all of the elected officials and members of the clergy, and certainly all of the citizens, for being here this morning. We've got work to do, and the fact that you are here is evidence that you have decided to take up your place beside all of us who have assigned and decided to take up that work. I want to thank Muriel for such a gracious introduction. My mother loves to hear those things. My daughter still believes them at 17. And my husband, Carmen, often wonders who the speaker is referring to. But please know that thanks to a family who keeps me grounded, I have never believed the hype. And from an early age, I've always understood that it is not about who I am, but about whose I am and what I've been commissioned to do. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to address you afforded by the Times and our friends at USX, NIPSCO, the Urban League, NAACP, WLTH, and the Gary Chamber of Commerce this morning. Bill Masterson is a special man. In a day and age when most newspapers have turned into tabloids, he is a new school publisher who adheres to the old school tradition. Those of us who are residents of Gary would do well to take a lesson, not just from Mayor Clay, but from Bill Masterson in promoting what is good about Gary. You will find no greater Gary advocate. I think he's probably just rehearsing for when he becomes a Gary resident. I thought Bill was my friend until he put me on the same program as one of the greatest preachers in the country in front of over 500 people. Reverend Dr. Flake, welcome to our city. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and vision. I count it a privilege to sit at your feet this morning and hope this is not an isolated experience. Our sponsors are representative of a cross-section of the corporate citizenry that is required to transform our city. We have symbiotic relationships, and though we have bumps and bruises along the way, like those of us who have been married for more than 5 minutes know, we all need each other. Welcome to the city that that faces great challenges, but whose citizens are determined to view them from a perspective of greater potential. The city built around the company and industry created by J.P. Morgan, Charles Schwab, Albert H. Gary, and the Carnegie family. And the city poised to become the next comeback story of the Rust Belt, the city of promise, Gary, Indiana. Recently, I had the privilege of providing remarks at a church anniversary celebration for my good friend, Charles Emery. And I was convinced that the substance of the message this morning would vastly differ from the message that I gave that evening. But recently I had an aha moment that the theme from that night really does cut across disciplines, groups, and venues. And it occurred to me that whether you're a member of the deacon board, the choir, or the airport board, at one time or another, you must prepare to make a decision and be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. That was my challenge to the attendees that night at Pilgrim, and that is my challenge to all of you this morning. To a pessimistic person, Gary's challenges probably seem insurmountable. I know they did to Mayor Clay a long, long time ago, but we know he is the eternal optimist. A declining tax base, a crumbling infrastructure, a rapidly declining population, high unemployment and crime statistics that rival much larger cities. If I took an informal poll in this room, each of you could provide a full analysis of those problems. Many of you are still marveling, and some even shaking your head, SMH, at the fact that I ran 3 times for what you consider to be a monumental headache. But I would submit to you that talking about problems is easy. In fact, I've always been taught that talk is cheap and that actions speak louder than words. Talking is part of the problem. Positive action is part of the solution. As a child growing up in this community, I was taught pride for my city, the Steel City. My father graduated from Frable High School, my mother from Roosevelt. As you can imagine, that was a spirited time in our house. He worked 35 years at USX in the tin mill. My grandfather and uncles worked there too, at one time or another. They understood the importance of steel to the future of their children. Each of us was given an opportunity at a college education. The values that I learned as a young child in Gary were no different than the values that were taught in Lake Station or Portage or East Gary, Hobart, Crown Point, and Snyder. Simple values such as do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Get a good education because no one can take that away. And always give a hard day's work for a good day's pay. As a young adult, I learned the value of democracy and government. I learned that it was important to fight for working men and women. I learned that those of us who had the courage to speak must stand up for the underdog and the voiceless. And I learned that you could be socially responsible and fiscally conscious. As we roll up our sleeves to address the issues that face our community, all of these lessons will serve us well. So what are the next steps to a more thriving Gary? First, we must have a plan. The shotgun approach will not work. Earlier this year, I developed a blueprint and would invite you to view it at our website, caringaboutgary.com. That blueprint sets priorities, creates deliverables, and timelines. The blueprint can serve as the foundation of a strategic plan that will inform our direction for the next 20 years.